all made New Year's resolutions? Again? Another one? I didn't do the last 38. Yes, you did, right? That's just some of us. I saw this on the table out there, and it's the table that says, for New Year's resolutions, or something like that. I forget what the title is, but there's a whole lot of books you could read to help you make New Year's resolutions, or at least to start each day with an idea that comes from the Lord. And that's beautiful. And I love that, of course, it's called Daily Bread because of the sermon and children's talk having to do with being fed by God. Now, how many of us have experienced what is spoken of in heaven and hell, where you hear something and you immediately go, this is true. This is true. I'm not going to start giving examples. I want you to think back. When have I heard something and I've said, this is true? And you didn't argue with yourself about it or other people. You just said, this is true. Now, many of us, that state of mind will come to us when we've struggled and somebody will say something from the Lord's word or just comforting from a friend or from their heart, and you feel comforted immediately that this has come from the Lord. You've been blessed with something that came from the Lord, and you don't have to argue in your mind. You just feel comforted. Right now, many of us are feeling a lot of anxiety because of what's going on in California, the fires that are... It's hard to talk about, just to think about. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people losing everything of their material possessions. And it's not the material things, is it? It's what they stand for. Those photo albums, back when people had photo albums, a lot of people still do. Those family heirlooms, that book your dad or that book your grandfather or grandmother gave you, that doily that means nothing, but to you it does, because your aunt gave it to you. Gone. And yes, we become attached to material things because they represent things that we don't have to argue with in our hearts. We just know and we just feel the love that represents. Many of us, in sitting beside somebody we love right now, may go, I remember that moment. I remember that powerful moment when I knew I was going to be with this person. And for those of you who are without that person in your life, there's no argument with anyone to say, oh my goodness, get over it. You lost your husband, you lost your wife. It was 4 or 5 days, years, months, decades ago. Aren't you over it by now? There's no argument. It's real and it's present. And no, you don't have to get over it. You miss that person. You love that person. And they're gone from this earth, but we know with the blessed teachings that were given in books like Heaven and Hell, which I read from, that they're right there with you. And they're never going to leave. You're going to leave here and see them. They're not going to come back down. But one of the blessed teachings that is written in several places in the writings of the new church about actually the person in the other world seeing you. And that could be your partner, but it can also be any friend or relative, parent, sibling, your child, if you've lost them, they're in the other world. That when you're reflecting upon them and they are then brought into your presence because thought brings presence, that they're able to see you, your spirit, there in the other world. It's one of the most comforting teachings I know of, because I miss a bunch of people that have left this earth and gone to the next. And I wonder, do they see me if I stop and I reflect upon their qualities, their loves, what they mean to me, do they see my spirit? If it's a parent who left when I was 15, do they see that I've now lived longer on this earth than they did? My father died at 57. I'm older than 38, as the children noted. Same age as my mother when she passed. And you have your people. You have what's written in your heart, as the passage says. Things of deep love that the Lord gives us. Things that at this time of year we can look to the past and we can look to the future and know that these things are present right now. And so this teaching from heaven and hell that talks about these angels that are fed by the Lord, and that's a reference going back to the Gospel of John, when Jesus is talking to those people and saying, you're the ones that are spoken of in Jeremiah, fed by the Lord. The Lord has drawn you to me, and you're being fed. You're getting your daily bread. Miracles are happening. You're getting what you need, and I'm going to give you more. And those celestial angels, and oftentimes we just put ourselves down and think, well, we could never be that. If any of you have resonated with anything I've said about those feelings of the heart, that is of a celestial genius. That is of a celestial nature. That is of the immediate things the Lord has planted within you that are yours directly from the Lord. I'm going to read a little passage. You get nervous when ministers say that, don't you? Just a little passage. It's Arcana Celestia, 1894. And it's talking about your essence. And what you have that makes you human is from the divine. It's a celestial. That's the highest level of love. It's from the divine, and it's yours. So it's talking about Sarah. She is that good joined to a truth, Abraham and Sarah. The essence itself of a person, which makes a person, is from the divine. The essence itself from which a person is the divine. Consequently, the celestial and the spiritual. Without the divine, celestial, and spiritual, there is nothing human in a person. Is that offensive to talk about you having the divine in you? It sure offended a lot of people when Jesus said the same things while he was in the world and said it literally, as I've just read to you from his teachings in the second coming. Unless you eat the flesh and drink the blood of the Son of Man, you have no life in you. What is more physical, life-sustaining than eating? I'm waiting for my 13th grandchild to be born. Due date tomorrow or the day after. My youngest child's going to have that grandchild. And what's going to happen? The baby's going to be born, it's going to cry, and it's going to want to be fed. Right? Right away, we're told in the writings that there are very few things that are innately, instinctively within the human being except the desire for feeding, that the embryo is sucking, waiting to be fed. It comes from the Lord creating you and me to go to the Lord to get our daily bread, to get fed by the Lord, to eat his flesh and to drink his blood. When we think literally, it's offensive, and a lot of people don't want to hear that. But when we think spiritually, it can also become offensive. People will say, no, there's no divine in me. Unless there is, you're not human. That's what 1894, which I just read, says. The essence that makes you human is that the Lord's celestial and spiritual qualities are in you. The beginning of the work, Heaven and Hell, says, I'm going to explain things that other people haven't heard and that offend people. There's a spirit of denial in the world. And I'm going to write this book so that people will say, who's come from that world to tell us? Well, the Lord brought Swedenborg into that world to tell him, lest therefore a spirit of denial, that same spirit that can make us go, eat the flesh, drink the blood, that same spirit that will make us say, the divine is in me and makes me human, that spirit of denial, lest it should prevail, and prevails especially among those who what? Do you know this passage well enough to know who it is that this spirit of denial especially prevails with? Let's say the poor people, the simple people, the wealthy people, the sophisticated academics. We're getting closer. This spirit of denial especially prevails with those who have much worldly wisdom. Now, is that you guys? A lot of us now have a lot of worldly wisdom. It's okay. It's okay to have worldly wisdom. But a spirit of denial of the divine qualities in you, it can prevail that your worldly wisdom says, no, 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 no. Humanism, the idea that what is human is really good. And there are a lot of things having to do with what goes on socially, that the best thing for society is the best thing overall. Those who prevail with much worldly wisdom, who will tell you what to do and what to think because they know better than you. Unless that kind of worldly wisdom should infect and corrupt the simple in heart and the simple in faith, it has been granted me to speak now with angels and spirits, this now for 11 years, and we know Swedenborg continued many, many years afterwards. It's the beginning of the new year. You'll be offered Holy Supper. You'll hear these words that are being spoken of. Will you consider the ideas that I've been speaking of? Will there be something offensive? Will there be something that in you will be denying that you can receive the divine celestial and the divine spiritual? That you can receive a feeling and a touch of the Lord that you don't have to argue with. The Lord wants you to be touched by Him. And we're told that the ultimates of the Holy Supper, they're so powerful because they are ultimates. They're things that you take into your body, you eat and you drink, just like you did on your first day of life. Because the Lord wants to feed you with His daily bread. Maybe you want to start a New Year's resolution by reading one a day in here. Be fed by the Lord, and have those things that are coming into you be written in your heart. A lot of disciples left the Lord. A lot of our ideas have to leave following the Lord. We have to leave behind a lot of worldly erudition, a lot of things that come to us constantly when we're on our tablets, Pastor, when we're surfing the net, when we're looking at how we're going to understand the world a little better. We have to sort through these worldly things of worldly wisdom. But don't let them infect your desire to have the Lord touch your heart and give you an immediate feeling of the Lord's presence. Because that's what the Lord wants. He wants you to feel His presence. He wants to be written on your heart. And it says written in your heart. How beautiful is that? The Lord's going to do that, perform that miracle, and then your life there'll be 12 more baskets, fragments. I mean, it multiplies what the Lord can do for us spiritually. Allow that human essence, which is the Lord's divine, to be written on your heart. Allow the Lord to take you in and for you to take Him in and put the things of worldly wisdom aside, erudition, things of natural, corporeal ideas and feelings. And going back to the beginning statements I made about the grief of people losing everything, you know that you lose nothing. You lose nothing. This place, your house, all of everything of the world could burn up and become cinder, and you lose nothing. And the people in the other world that know you, they have lost nothing of you. And you will lose nothing of all the experiences that you have. One of the miracles of these baskets or fragments is that everything you've experienced is recorded and contained within your interior memory. That is written in your heart. People grieve because they can no longer see the face of somebody that they loved, and it doesn't appear to them the way it used to be, but it's there. One of the beautiful passages in the heaven and hell, just a little bit after this, number 25, is saying, people get into the other world and they join together among people that are like them, and they all kind of look alike. They all kind of smile the same way. Their eyes all have the same kind of sparkle. And Swedenborg says, I was let to see the society I was visiting appear as one face, and all the people from that society passing by, affecting the look of that face. It stayed the same face, but it changed with each individual love of those people, those angels. In our spiritual lives, in our natural lives, everything you've ever really loved will be with you. And as you approach the Holy Supper, you think about the things you want to leave behind, the things that aren't faithful to the Lord. Let those things go. If you've had affections and loves that have led you in disorderly or evil ways, ask the Lord for that strength to just let those things go. Trust in the Lord and do good and feed on His thankfulness, and He will give you the desires of your heart. What desires are those being spoken of? Some people interpret that to say, if I want this person to marry me, if I trust in the Lord, I'll get the desire of my heart and they'll marry me. It's the other way around, and Jesus ends talking to His disciples by saying, all you have come to me, the Lord has given you to have that desire that drew you towards me. Trust in the Lord. He will give you new desires for your heart. He will give you the desires of your heart. And it's hard. It's hard to change, isn't it? But ask the Lord, what do I need to change? What new desires do I need to have as I look towards the new year, as I look towards communion, as I look towards taking you into me and me being yours? Amen.